I'm John Wilson, Head of Technical Research and Policy at Spence and Partners, and I'm joined today by my colleague Graeme Riddoch, who is Head of Proposition at our business. And today we are discussing the topic of pension dashboards, which hopefully by now pretty much every pension scheme trustee has heard of, and they're probably aware of the nature of the concept that a pension dashboard is a way for members of pension schemes to see all their pension rights across all their pension arrangements in a single place, and hopefully get back in touch with pension arrangements that they may have lost contact with over the years, given that many people will have 10 or more jobs over a working life. So it all sounds fairly straightforward in practice. You get in touch with a pension dashboard. There will be more than one, and we'll get on to that. And you will be able to find out where all your pension rights are. So Graeme, I mean, that sounds all very easy, but underneath the bonnet, in terms of the infrastructure and ecosystem, I should imagine there's quite a lot going on. Can you tell us a bit more about the nature of the beast, please?
Yeah, thanks, Don. Yeah, so yeah, it's a good analogy. That it's a bit like, you want to go to the moon? What do you need? Spacesuit, compass, rocket. Let's go. And dashboards is not far off landing a man on the moon in some respects. So as you say, at a very high level, dead simple. Someone will be able to use an online identity verification service that's part of the dashboard's infrastructure. And you may have used some of these things before. So you'll get a passport or a driving license, and you'll take a photograph with your phone camera, and then you'll record a quick movie. And that information goes round the back, and it'll be verified that, yes, you are John Wilson, and that, yes, that is your date of birth, and that's your current postcode. And then that find information and some self-submitted stuff as well. So you, John, can say, oh yeah, and my national insurance number is, and my mobile phone number is, and my email address is. And then this find message goes to every single pension scheme in the UK, because we don't know, you don't know where your pension is. So it goes to every single pension scheme in the UK. So that's a big thing. And every single pension scheme in the UK gets this electronic find message and then has to respond going, I've got a match, or I've got some of these things look like a match, or some of these things don't. So there's a decision to be had, because trustees themselves have to decide what they will consider a match. So you might have the name correct, you might have the date of birth, but because it's a deferred member, they have moved address and not updated the administrator, and you get a mismatch on the address. So you're not going to release information on that basis. So you'll go, yeah, partial match, phone us, which you want to avoid at all costs as an administrator, because the experience in Denmark when they launched this was they had millions of requests coming in. So there's a real risk admin gets swamped with people going, I think I might have a pension. Now, in some ways, that's the easy bit. But to make that work, obviously, you have to have all your records digitally available. So anything on a feature on paper in terms of member records, that's just no good. Everything has to be digitally available, and you have to be able to return that yes, no match in real time. And having done that, you get to the hard bit, which for DC schemes, not so bad, but for DB, very tricky. So I found John Wilson. I'm satisfied that it is John Wilson that matches on my scheme. I now have to return an estimated retirement income, or an ERI in the jargon, and that has to go back up to the dashboard. And that's an estimate of your pension at the normal retirement date of the scheme. And what that means is that you either have to pre-calculate everyone's estimated retirement income and hold them, or you have to do them in real time as requests come in. Now, DB, that's tricky. There's going to be something like a 10-day service standard to calculate an estimated retirement income and return it. Not quite so bad for DC schemes, because you can just use the statutory money purchase illustration value, and that can be anything up to 13 months old. So you will have those numbers. You have to make them digitally available, but at least you've done that calculation. What we're hearing is the real problem for DB schemes in particular is, unless you've got a system and data good enough, you can't do that estimated retirement income calculation easily, which is a fundamental requirement of dashboards.
Thanks, Graeme. I mean, clearly, a lot going on there underneath the bonnet, and some trustees of pension schemes might be thinking, well, there's clearly still a lot of work to be done on this, but the work is being done at a pace now. We have had consultations on draft regulations. We now have pensions regulator guidance. It seems very clear to us in the pensions industry that pension dashboards are definitely going to happen this time, even though they've been talked about for many years. Could you speak to maybe the timetable for them a little bit, and also maybe elaborate a little bit on some of the new terminology that pension schemes are going to have to get familiar with: find data, view data, the ERI that you mentioned, and importantly the fact that I intentionally at the start used the term pension dashboards, because there will be a government-backed one. But there is also likely to be commercial ones as well. So pension schemes need to get ready for more than one dashboard.
Yeah. So let's start there, John. So what you've got are any number of dashboards that meet the legislative requirements. And as you said, there will be more than one. There's probably about 4 or 5 knock around already. And they will connect to effectively the dashboard infrastructure. That's the bit that's getting built. And that's the thing that actually takes all the messaging and then pushes it down to the schemes and goes, I've got someone looks like this. Have you got someone looks like this? And it handles all that messaging and traffic, and it's the kind of the infrastructure and security and the governance side. The dashboards are simply bits of kit, which are portals where someone can go and log in and then access this online government digital identity service, which is the first stage, which goes, yes, I'm satisfied that this is John Wilson and here are his attributes, and it feeds that down to the dashboard infrastructure. At the bottom, you've got what are called data providers, and that's the pension schemes. So that could be third-party administrators, it could be in-house admin, and the data providers are the ones that ultimately get all these messages and then this traffic coming down. I'll return to that theme in a minute. Timetable slipped a wee bit back, but not much. So the very biggest schemes are going to go into what's called staging, which means that you've got to be ready and have all your records on and be ready effectively for dashboard. That will be late next year. It was going to be earlier in the year, but it slipped back a bit. That's the very big schemes, 10, 20,000 plus members, and then you find the rump of smaller schemes will fall over 2024, 2025. Now, some people go, well, that's great, that's miles out. It's not really. And I say, we'll talk about the kind of things that schemes need to be thinking about now to make sure they're ready. And some of them are quick and some are absolutely not. So actually just recognizing where you're at, doing a bit of an internal assessment and getting comfortable, particularly as a trustee, because you're on the hook, it's important to start that work now.
Yeah, and on starting that work, just picking up on a point you made there, as to the nature of pension dashboards. I mean, that they are like a platform or a portal. They're not holding data. The pension schemes still hold their own respective data, and the trustees of the pension schemes are still the data controllers in relation to that personal information, to use data protection legislation terminology. Obviously, from a trustee point of view, there's two things that struck me from what you said there, is that pension schemes are going to have their house in order in terms of their data, and as still being responsible for the pension information, trustees are going to have to be very careful when a Mr. Smith comes along and says, I'd like my information on my pension scheme benefits, which I think are with you. And it is the trustees of that scheme that run the risk of sending that information maybe to the wrong Mr. Smith.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, something like I looked this up for a blog I'm writing. 12% of the UK population is called Smith. There's an excess of 500,000. And what's the chances of having an Ian Smith in your scheme who was born on 1st July 1970? So you'll have a name match, you'll have a date of birth match. You probably won't have a postcode match unless it's your Mr. Smith. But in that scenario, you get what's called this fuzzy match, which looks like it might be Mr. Smith, we're not sure. And then the message that goes back up is, we're not sure if it's you, contact us. And you want to try and avoid that at all costs. simply because the traffic and the noise it brings into the admin team could be monumental. And one area trustees really need to think about. So there's a whole range of match criteria, and it's down to the scheme to decide what they will return a match on. So one scheme might say, well, if the name matches, the date of birth matches, and the national insurance number matches, we'll consider that a match, and we'll go, yeah, that's you, and we'll return it. Others may say, no, I want everything. I want date of birth, I want email address, I want postcode, I want national insurance number. If anything's wrong or out, we're calling that a fail, and I'm not returning anything. So in the spirit of the legislation, which is to make it easy for people to try and actually access their benefits, it would be a bad outcome for schemes to go, there's 5 match points and every single one has to be ticked, or we're saying it's a fail. So you're going to have to use some degree of proportionality, but it's absolutely something that trustees need to start thinking about now, because, for example, if you decide that address is a key match point, well, you probably want to start thinking about doing a LexisNexis or something of that nature, ID verification, address check on all your members.
Yes.
So when you get that match message in, you go, yeah, got that postcode, because you've just updated and you spotted that 20% of your members have moved house and never told you. So you've now got the correct address. So when the fine message comes in, you go, no, definitely not that member. I know it's a Smith, and it's the same date of birth, but I just got an up-to-date address for this guy, and that's not him. Fail.
Indeed.
So things like that, you need to start thinking about and planning for now. Otherwise, it will really come back and bite you later in the process.
Yeah, I mean, a very clear message from that does seem to be that for so many years, many have tried to convince trustees that the good data is not just a nice to have, it's a must have. And now it's an absolute imperative, a data cleansing exercise, making sure your data's clean, and also as far as possible digitized. Trustees should be seeing that as an investment, which will save them a lot of time, money, and effort later on when dashboards are up and running for the majority of pension schemes in the UK. So I think we're getting on now, Graeme, to what pension scheme trustees and administrators should be doing. Data, I think, is the top of that list. But what kind of other actions would you give trustees in terms of making sure the people that look after the scheme on a day-to-day basis are going to be ready to hit the ground running?
Yeah, well, we have got a checklist which we can make available. And it kind of just starts from, first thing you need to know is, when is your scheme expected to stage? If it's next year and you've got a plan now, you're in trouble. But majority of schemes will now be 2024. Okay, that's great. That's not that far off, particularly given some of the issues we've talked about. So staging date, when do you have to be ready? Key thing. You then probably want to do this kind of data assessment. So you need to say, right, look at your data in 2 ways. One for, is it available online? Because if it's not, there's no way you can do this electronic reconciliation and yes, I've got this member, or no, I haven't. You then need to look at what will be your find criteria. So, which of these different attributes will you be using? And then make sure your data lines up against it. And as we discussed, you'd be sound investment to just make sure everyone's address is correct. It's a good thing to do anyway, but even more so now. I've spoken to a few schemes who are just horrified at the level of noise they may get with all these fuzzy matches, and people get the message, not sure if this is yours, phone us. And then they have to take each individual member through an ID verification process anyway. So, just get that data assessment done. Then the next bit you're looking at, because we focused a fair bit on this find mechanism and returning information back up. The next bit is you've got something like about 5 milliseconds to then go, oh yeah, and there's the estimated retirement income for John Wilson. So we did hear apocryphally of one very large scheme where the underlying admin platform can't do these automated benefit calculations for DB. And there's lots of schemes out there fall into that category. Some of the biggest schemes have come across as quite horrific. Some of the smaller schemes, they use spreadsheets off the side to work out actual retirement incomes when people, come to the point of retirement.
Yeah,
that's just not working for dashboards, because you either have to, for DB in particular, you have to either have a pre-calculated value, which can be up to 13 months old, or if you haven't, you've got 10 working days to actually give an accurate figure back up into the system. So you need to be talking to your administrator, your TPA, and getting a picture of what percentage of the members you can automate calculations on. And that'll be down to two things. The first thing is the underlying data. So have you got everything on the record in a format that will allow you to do that calculation? Yes. So if you've got a transfer value in that someone's stuck in a drawer over there, which you kind of knows there, but you don't worry about it because you'll take it out that drawer at the point of retirement and then you do the accurate calculation. Well, that's not good enough for Pension Dashboard. So is your data complete, fit for purpose and good enough to do the calculation? And then the next bit is, can you do the calculation? And the scheme I referred to at the beginning of this piece was couldn't do the calculation in excess of 100,000 members. So has retained the scheme actuary to work out an estimated retirement income for every single member. And the amount of money is eye-watering, but it's the only way they think they can actually have all the estimated retirement income numbers ready. And then in a format, it can be returned to the dashboard.
Yeah.
So those are the things that keep me awake at night. And, hopefully we'll also start to get other people thinking about, these issues.
Indeed. Yeah. So, in terms of that kind of what works and what doesn't work, and also, maybe, so far we've been saying all these things that other people should be doing, to just to show people that we are practicing what we preach here, Graeme. Maybe talk to what we're doing within our own business and the different options that we maybe went through before deciding on the solution that we've chosen.
Sure thing, John. Yeah, so I think the good news is we're extremely well placed. The reason we're extremely well placed is that the administration platform Spence use called Mantle. It's about 7 years old. It lives in the cloud, and it's probably the most modern administration platform on the market. And it's got a number of key attributes which make Pension Dashboard a relative walk in the park. The key one is that Mantle can and does automate 100% of benefit calculations, subject to having the data. Now, there's other systems out there which can do a good chunk of automation of benefit calcs, but they tend to fall over when you get to the last 10, 20%, which we're just like, never seen that before. Oh, there's no point automating that. It's only 20 members in that category, or it's just too hard or too difficult. The kind of proof point around how Mantle automates calculations is that Mantle is used by the government actuaries department. And Mantle is not just an administration platform, it's also an actuarial system. And the way we use it in Spence is we use both bits talking to each other. But we've got some customers like GAD, PwC, EY, and now British Telecom Pension Scheme, they just use the actuarial bit. And the Government Actuaries Department have programmed every single public sector scheme onto Mantle and automated every single benefit calculation, including the McLeod judgment, which is a fairly contemporary one, which is basically someone dropped a bad one and said, someone, just have a choice of career average or final salary at the point of retirement. So Mantle can also automate that calculation. So first thing is we can automate everything, and therefore it's easy to go, yes, the estimated retirement income is. Yes. You still need to make sure your data is complete and good underneath, and that's something which we're looking at the moment. We will be not attaching directly to the dashboard infrastructure, simply because our system Mantle will be getting hammered with potentially millions of messages a day. Yes. So what we're doing is we're taking all the information that's required and we're giving it to what's called a integrated service provider. In this case, that's our partner Altus, one of the biggest in the market. And Altus hold all our data. And when a request comes in, it hits Altus, and Altus interrogate the data and go, yeah, got John Wilson, that's what you need. There's his estimated retirement income. So in using Altus, we take all the pressure and a lot of governance and security requirements away from Mantle. So effectively, Mantle will generate the files with the member information and the estimated retirement incomes, and then push them across to Altus, who will host them, and they'll respond to all these find request messages.
Indeed, that option, the ISP or integrated service provider, I should imagine that's likely to be the preferred solution for a lot of pension administration businesses.
Oh yeah, there's a few being built, but yeah, what you absolutely don't want to do, because the governance requirements for attaching to pension dashboards are extremely high, which is not to say we couldn't meet them, we absolutely could, but it's kind of the maintenance and the overhead. Because what you're doing is connecting to government infrastructure, which can have very high standards around data security, not bringing viruses in, spam, response times. And it's just not worth anyone's time actually building that capability individually for their own scheme. Far easier just to go, there's my information, you now deal with it, and you just have to keep your information up to date. Let me just show you something, John, while we're talking here, because the nature of Mantle, as I say, is that it automates benefit calculations. Yes. And so I'm not going to tell you that. I'm going to show you how it does it very quick. I've got a little movie here. So I'm just going to screen share. It only takes about 30 seconds.
That's okay. That's it sharing now, Graeme.
Good. Okay. So what you're looking at here is actually an admin record inside our system Mantle. And it's a video. It's not live, but I'll just click this and show you what's going on. So ignore that. We've got a phone app where people can message us. You can see all the documents the members got. We've got telephone notes, all the usual things you'd expect. Want to get down here, basic member data, look, NI, number, address, postcode. But the bit I really want to show you is down the bottom of the admin record, because anyone that's got our phone app, every single day we calculate all the pension benefits from current age to 75. Here they are turning up. So Mantle does this automatically, and all we'll do is push these numbers, and there's age 65, bang. So there's the number you need to serve the dashboard. And Mantle does that, just does it automatically. And the nice thing is that when something changes on the underlying member record, revaluation rate changes, or the member gets divorced, or a pension sharing order comes on, or anything of that nature, Mantle just goes, oh, there's a change, bang, recalculates the number, and then pushes the new number through to Altus using a bit of jargon, something an API, just a pipe that joins two systems up. So Mantle's doing that already. That's not in build. That actually runs here and now. So subject to the data quality being good enough. And the nice thing as well is when Mantle does this, and say a member's calculation fails, it immediately gets flagged to the administrator, gets pushed up into the workflow. This has failed. And they go, all right, okay. And they go in and have a look and go, oh, look, there's that transfer in that never got put on the record. Put the transfer in, calculation, and automatically runs. And when it's successful, it pushes a new number to Altus. So even where you've got patchy data, the system will still identify that and rectify it.
Yeah, thanks, Graeme. That was useful. Kind of brought it to life in terms of how this actually works, But for me, there's some kind of overarching messages here, is that it really is all systems go with dashboards now. It's going to start as early as next year, and look, even if you're the year after that or later, don't think that you have all the time in the world. There's a lot of work to be done by the pension scheme, the trustees of that scheme, and the service providers that they work with. In particular, if you have a lot of work to get done in terms of having your pension scheme membership data ready for dashboards, you really need to be thinking about that now, because you'll not be the only pension scheme that's doing that. There may be a bit of a rush on the market next year, and there is a finite capacity in our industry. So hopefully, if you only take away one message, from the conversation that we have had today, is you should be thinking about this now, even if you look at your staging timetable and your 2024 or beyond. Any other sort of key messages that you would want to convey?
I think it should be viewed as a good thing. I know there's a lot in the industry got their head in their hands just because of the degree of difficulty. Fact is, some underlying systems just can't do this. They're not fit for purpose. and it may drive some people to go, you know what, it's time to upgrade the system. Data is our perennial problem as an industry, and actually getting the data in better shape will have myriad benefits in any case. So I think it's what you said, John. It's mandatory. Guy Offerman's been really vocal. It's coming. Stand by your beds. And yeah, there's some pain short term, but actually there'll be lots of good outcomes by doing this well.
Absolutely, yeah. Let's not forget, this is ultimately about, pension scheme members, and the industry has debated and argued for years, what to do about, people losing their pension pots and potentially losing out on valuable benefits. So this is an important part of that solution. So
yeah.
Thank you very much, Graeme, and I hope everybody viewing this has found it useful. In the closing credits, we will include some further information, a link to our guide on dashboards and the other video that Graeme mentioned, and we'll also include email addresses for both Graeme and I. So please do feel free to get in touch if you want to discuss dashboards, or you have any questions on what you've viewed today, or any other pressing pension scheme matters. Thank you very much. Goodbye, and thank you, Graeme.
Thanks, bye.